Welcome to our channel, Listen to My Story. Please like, share and subscribe.
Hey, my name is Anne. It was the summer break before college, and as a graduation kind of celebration and before each and everyone went to a different college, my best friends and I decided to go on a fancy summer vacation to one of the most beautiful places on earth. At least that's what I think, to Hawaii. I was in my room daydreaming about wearing those cool coconut bras while enjoying an exotic juice, maybe even doing a hula dance, and then my best friend Kim called and burst my coconut bubble. She suggested that since we're off to a whole new stage of our lives, we may as well get a complete makeover. I thought she meant we should go shopping or something, but no, she said we should go to the hair salon and get new haircuts and maybe even dye our hair. I admit that I was overly excited about the whole thing, so I said yes. My normal hairdresser was on annual leave. She has always cut my hair exactly how I describe it. I love her. However, she has been gone for a while, and we couldn't wait any longer for a haircut, so I made an appointment with another hairdresser at the same salon. On a side note, Kim is blonde, while I'm a brunette. I know this info might not sound useful, but it will come in handy throughout the story. Kim and I drove to the hair salon. The place looked extra fancy, the kind of place you would trust. We went inside all giggly like we were 12. We were actually 18 at the time. Anyways, we were greeted by a really nice lady. That lady said that Kim should get highlights and I should go for the same, plus going blonde. I was skeptic, but who cares? It's summertime. The lady put bleach all over my head and went to do Kim's hair. So, after 15 minutes, my scalp started burning like crazy. So I called the nice lady and she said it was time to wash the bleach. As she was washing my head, her smiley face went poker. Chunks of my now orange hair were all over the sink. Kim looked at me and her eyes got as big as my head. The lady asked me not to freak out and that she could cover the bald spots with a really short haircut. The lady asked me not to freak out and that she could cover the bald spots, and so she started cutting my hair. So far, so good. Then she snips a huge section out of the front of my hair saying that she was framing my face. At this point, it was too late to say anything. The haircut was just hideous. Not me at all, and especially not what I asked for. So I told her that I hated it. She felt really bad and I started to tear up because it was seriously so ugly. And now that I was stuck with a really bad haircut, I tried to calm myself that maybe the color will turn out okay. And then she put the dye on my hair and it turned my hair green. The only solution now was to become a redhead, and that was just a no for me. I don't have the complexion of a redhead. Our boyfriends were actually going to pick us up from the salon, and just imagining the look on Nick's face made me cry and laugh at the same time. Rachel played it really cool, and even her highlights did not go so well. But that incident was just one of a kind. I ended up with the weirdest hair color ever. It was like I was half mermaid, half dragon. This did not stop us from enjoying our summer break though. It was actually a good source of jokes for a long, long time.
He was a dream, the future, or so I thought. But my love was cursed right from the start. Sounds a bit confusing, right? Let me explain. But first, I should probably introduce myself. I'm Carolyn. I was a dreamer. I dreamed of a good, warm, stable, successful life. I wanted a good job. And I wanted to travel around the world a bit with Helen. She was my best friend. We virtually shared the same dreams, and hobbies, and interests, and lifestyles. We've been friends since we were kids. People often thought that we were sisters. I did too, in fact. She even got jealous if anyone tried to get close to me. Every day, Helen and I worked a little more towards our dreams. Once, when Helen and I were traveling with some of our friends, we had a problem with the hostess on the plane. A gentleman intervened and cleverly solved our problems. His name was Danny. I liked him. A lot. I thought about him often. But whenever I talked to Helen about him, she told me that he was not as amazing as I seemed to think he was. Coincidentally, I met him again at a party of a mutual friend. We talked together till daylight. I told Helen about our encounter, and she expressed her wishes that my love story would have a happy ending. I similarly told her that I hoped she would find the love of her life someday too. Everything would be okay, we figured. Then, one day, I received a letter in our mailbox. It was in weird handwriting, as if the writer had written it with a trembling hand. I opened it curiously. It said that my love for Danny would become a curse if I didn't give him up and get him out of my life. What nonsense, I thought. Whose idea of a silly joke was this? I immediately called Danny and Helen to tell them about the letter. Danny laughed, but Helen was worried and suggested that I should be careful from now on. That same day, Danny had a horrible car accident, but fortunately he wasn't hurt. A detective investigating the case determined that his car brakes had been tampered with. In another incident, a car almost hit me, but it swerved away at the last minute. When I mentioned this incident to Danny, he tried to calm me down and told me to just forget about it. He gave me a beautiful bracelet as a present and proposed. We got engaged, and I couldn't have been happier. I wanted to show the bracelet to Helen, but somehow I seemed to have lost it. I couldn't find it anywhere. Anyway, when I told Helen about his proposal, she was thrilled for me. I spent days shopping for just the right wedding dress. I was so busy with preparations that I forgot all about the ominous letter. I went to the wedding hall early to make sure that everything was ready and prepared. Helen was helping me, and Danny kept calling me to make sure I was all right. Suddenly, the lights went out. I called out to Helen, worried that she might have tripped and fallen when the lights were out. When the lights came back on, Helen had fainted, and my dress had disappeared. I screamed to the ceiling, "What do you want from me? Leave me alone!" Suddenly, Danny appeared out of nowhere and asked me what had happened. I told him then and there that we must break off our engagement, otherwise the curse the letter mentioned might injure someone or cause someone to die. Then Helen came too and tried to calm me down. She told me to go to the car and that she would get our stuff and follow me. I loved Danny and wanted to marry him, but now I was seriously worried that this curse threat might actually be real. Helen came back carrying a bag and a large suitcase and told Danny not to worry, that she would drive me home and then call him to tell him that we had arrived safely. I was still crying, and Helen was trying to calm me down. When we arrived home, I noticed something strange. Helen was carrying a bag that was partially open, and I glimpsed a piece of clothing stuffed into it. It looked exactly like my dress. I opened the bag and found that it was my dress. I confronted Helen and demanded to know how my missing dress ended up in her bag. I clearly caught her red-handed, and she was unable to answer coherently. I realized at that moment that the source of the so-called curse was Helen. "Helen," I said, "how dare you do this to me? I thought we were like sisters to each other." She replied icily, with a glare that I saw for the first time. She said that she fell in love with Danny just as I did, but he chose me instead of her, and that she hated me for it. She said she won him over and got him to love her instead. Then they both tried to scare me into calling off the wedding so that she and Danny could be together. There are no words to describe how I felt at the time. I replied in a similar tone. I told her that I don't ever want to see her again, or Danny. Neither of them mattered anymore. I never did see Helen or Danny after that day. I'm on a Caribbean island now, sipping on a cocktail. I read in the paper that Danny and Helen had announced their engagement. I'm thinking about what wedding present I should give them as a surprise.
We lived with a monster who knew no mercy. He would hit and insult us all the time. I wished him dead on a daily basis. He would kick me out of the house often. But as we all know, there comes a turning point in everyone's life that either ends in success or tragedy. Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Lara. I am the middle sister among 4 siblings. We lived with a cruel father, whose bad behavior had long erased any kind memories we may have once had for him. Our mother was kind, lovely, and responsible. She used to take care of us in every way, but she finally had to abandon us because she just couldn't take any more of father's abuse. I remember the scene vividly to this very day. There was a big fight between my parents. At the end of it, mother had opened the door while holding a suitcase. We were too young to understand anything at the time. She was crying as she turned and walked out of our lives forever. We were expecting father's attitude to change after that, but it didn't. He continued mistreating and ridiculing us every opportunity he got, neglecting us completely. He gave us neither food nor clothes, only a very small amount of money to fend for ourselves. What could we do? We had to live with the situation. He would often return home drunk at midnight, scared,
We'd stay quiet in our rooms. The only bright spot in our lives was our dear brother Philip. He was father's favorite son, which caused us to depend on Philip to get anything we need, like money or other necessities. Philip was so funny. He could make us and even father laugh. He had a way with father and could usually manipulate him to protect us a little. We all loved Philip. He was the only sunshine in our miserable, gloomy existence. One day, we woke up in the middle of a stormy weather. We turned on the TV and listened to the news. It said the bad weather had spawned a huge tornado. It was heading our way. They advised people to stay inside. We all looked at each other, knowing full well that our old worn-out roof could not withstand the tornado. Philip said he needed to talk to father. After he knocked and entered father's room, we heard father shouting at Philip. Philip had a look of fear on his face. Father then shouted, "If anyone wants to fix anything at home, then he is welcome to, but I will not fix anything." Philip gasped and said, "But Dad, it's a big tornado." Father then grabbed Philip by the collar and pulled him up close, saying, "Then you go fix it." Philip was so afraid he couldn't swallow. Father dragged Philip to the backyard. He brought nails, wood, a hammer, and a long ladder. Philip was terrified when father pushed these things at him and told him to get to work. Philip begged, "Please, Dad," but father just shouted, "Go." Philip took the nails, the hammer, and the wood and began to climb the ladder up to the roof. The wind was howling, blowing very hard, and I had a feeling of dread that something terrible was about to happen. Father just stood there, not worried about Philip's safety at all. To calm us down, Philip looked at us, as if to say, "Don't worry, everyone. I'll be okay." There were many wires on the roof. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind caused Philip to lose his balance, and he reached out to grab onto something to keep from falling. Unfortunately, he got hold of an uninsulated wire. He screamed at once and fell off the roof. We watched, horrified, and began screaming. Father frantically rushed over to Philip's body lying on the ground. He lifted Philip's head into his arms and rocked him gently, but Philip was dead. He got electrocuted. We had never seen Father cry, but he cried a lot that day. At Philip's funeral, we all stood and looked at the photo, showing Philip smiling like an angel. Father hugged us as a group and said, "Please forgive me, kids. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that I loved you all so much. I'm so sorry for not being a good father." We believed him. We hugged him back. He was being sincere with us for once. From that point on, he was a changed man. He gave us everything. Love, attention, money. Now we love our home and our lives. I can finally say truthfully, with all my heart, I love you, Daddy.